Hi everybody. Guess what time it is? Well, had December 2018 JW broadcast. Tally Day. I know you're dying to know, right? Well, I listened to 1 hour and 11 minutes of the 145th Gilead graduation. All the different talks. 2 of them were governing body talks. I'll tell you a few choice details in a few minutes. But first of all, Jehovah, 77 times. Faithful and discreet slave, 12. Whoa. Jesus, 24. I'll tell you about that. Satan, 8. Truth, once. And Holy Spirit, twice. Well, a couple of things got me. They had one talk for the graduation that was all about Jesus and his example for us, which really surprised me. That's how come Jesus got so many mentions, and it was a lot better than just mentioning him in passing. Actually had a whole talk about him. Woo, wow, impressive. But a couple of things stood out to me. First being persecution. You know how Jehovah's Witnesses like to talk about persecution. But this person during the talk, and I wrote it down, I took notes, see, and he says persecution is equivalent to turbulence on a plane that causes fear or doubt. Really? That went right along with the picture I saw not too long ago where it had persecution, and then it was just because someone was, like, I don't want to hear what you have to say kind of thing, brushing them off. And that they classified that as persecution. I don't agree with that. Persecution to me is when they tell you, give up your religion or we're going to put you in a firing squad, or we're going to kill you and your family if you don't give up your religion. I mean, that's persecution, but just people not wanting to listen, or how can you compare persecution to turbulence on a plane that causes fear or doubt? I think persecution is a whole heck of a lot more than just turbulence. Turbulence, oh my God. And, of course, the faithful and discreet slave, they mentioned, they had a big, long discussion on trust the faithful, discreet slave. Satan wants us not to. Things that we read or hear is a trap, so they don't want you listening to things that you see or hear on the internet or the news or newspapers or anything, because it's a trap to draw you away from the faithful and discreet slave. They also said, and get a load of this, trusting the faithful and discreet slave shows that you trust Jehovah. No, it doesn't. Because there's a whole bunch of Jesus-loving, God-fearing persons in the world that don't give a diddly squat of what their faithful and discreet slave have to say. Their faithful and discreet slave lie to them using theocratic warfare. But, one of the talks was about following Jesus' example, like I said, and how he always looked to his Father for guidance and support and all that. And that was actually a pretty nice talk. A guy by the last name Cochran, he always gives really nice talks with videos that accompany his stuff. That was a pretty nice talk. He's a real emotional, inspirational speaker, one of those at Gilead, and they wanted the graduates to remember that they have to always listen and obey the faithful and discreet slave. And that's so misleading, because, see, people are allowed to listen and obey Jesus. It's written right in God's word, Jesus' commands and explanations for things. And the faithful and discreet slave, by saying that obeying them proves that you love Jehovah, they are pretty much making themselves equal to God. And I don't think that's right at all. At all. I mean, you can leave your comments about that in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. I have for a long time, since I've been keeping tallies, and you guys know that I was amazed that they always mentioned Satan more than Jesus. And I said that I was going to put my fireworks up when they finally mentioned Jesus more than Satan. And they did. And I put my version of fireworks up just, it was last month or the month before. And as I've been talking about Jesus and how much he actually means, because Christianity really is based on Jesus, right? Christ, Christian, so you cannot be a Christian without Christ. And then when they did this video and they did a whole entire talk on Jesus and his example for us, that really amazes me. I'd love to see more of that. I know that most of the time they really don't discuss them unless they open up the Bible and read a scripture that mentions them. They don't really talk about them that much. I know in the publications they might have, articles about them and stuff maybe, but, if a person is just tuning in to listen to the broadcast like I do, they don't mention them enough or even say much about them. So I was happy to see that. Some people, when they do their YouTube, they're looking at publications and reviewing publications and what's said in the publications and what it means and if it's right or, strays from being biblical and stuff. Some people listen to talks and on their channels, and they review talks that have been given and stuff. I do the broadcast. I don't mind listening to the broadcast. It intrigues me. I like to see what kinds of things they are not telling the truth about. The organization, nowhere on their website do they let any of their members know about the court cases against the organization. They do not tell their members of the court cases they lose on their website or their publications. They don't let their members know why they're being sued or for how much. They don't tell them the cases they've lost and how much they have to pay out. They only talk about if they win a case, or if it involves like persecution, like banning them in Russia. I've seen a lot of different people and websites, even the jw.org website, talk about the persecution in Russia. Well, when the ban was going to court, when they were, the Russian court was deciding whether they were going to ban Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia or not, I went on to the Russian court site where they had a live thing in the courtroom of what was going on. Now, I don't understand Russian, but everybody knows what the outcome of it was. Well, I went on, Google Translate's a wonderful thing. I love Google Translate. There's a couple forms of it. One of them is really excellent for talking back and forth to people. You know, it's a copy and paste thing. Works wonderfully. And lots of different languages. You know, it makes it really easy to talk to other people of different languages. Right on my laptop, if a video comes up, if they have something written in the comments, I can just left click my mouse and it says translate into English, and then I can read everything. So that's what I did on the Russian website. Was I went up to the court page when it was in court, and I pushed to left clicked for translating to English, and I went through the court findings and the evidence, all that stuff, and I went through there to see what did they have as evidence, and what were their findings, and what did they find out while they were investigating whether or not they were going to ban them. And I read through all that stuff. What really surprised me was that and what a lot of people don't understand is from the Russian side, and I'll say it again, I tell people all the time because I understand why they banned them in Russia and how the Russians see it. So you have to think of it this way. You know that every family that has interaction with Jehovah's Witness organization, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, every single family is broken up. Not just not at the end, you know, not if they're disfellowshipped or disassociated or faded or anything like that. Not just there. See, when you very first become interested in being a Jehovah's Witness, they encourage you to push your non-JW family members away. So you distance yourself from them. It could be, you know, some people haven't seen their family members in 30-some years because their other family members aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, and the ones that become Jehovah's Witnesses distance themselves from them. So they're not close anymore. They become strangers over time. So it divides the family up from the beginning. Then later on, you're raising your family in there or anything like that, and you have a family member that does some kind of an offense inside of the organization, and they get disfellowshipped, or they want to leave, they dissociate themselves. Well, then the family, even inside the organization, is broken up, because then you can't talk to those family members or associate with them or visit them, or you know how it divides it up. Well, the Russians, and some of the Russians were looking at it, is that family is the core of society. And when you start breaking up families, you start dividing the society as a whole. And the Russians see that as an attack on their Russian citizens. Because, you know, I've talked to a lot of people that have been ousted or chose to leave the organization. And they're, you know, 60, 70-year-old people that their whole entire family is still inside the organization, and that leaves them in their old age with no family to help them, no one by their side. You know, their family members aren't going to come over and mow the grass for them or bring them dinner or take them to the doctors or anything like that, because they're not supposed to associate with them. The organization says, oh, well, family's still a family, you just can't discuss Bible things with them or spiritual matters with them. But the truth of the matter is that the members of the organization will not associate with them. They won't even say hello to them. They won't call them. They won't nothing. This woman contacted me once. She was 70 years old. She decided at one point that the religion wasn't for her and she pulled away. Well, she was abandoned by her children and her grandchildren and was all alone. You know, a person that leaves Watchtower organization could still be the very same loving Christian person that they were. It's just that they don't want to belong to a certain organization or be tied to an organization. My opinion is like that too. I try to live my life as Christ commands and the rules and laws that he set up, and I love my God with my whole heart, but I don't want to belong to a religious organization, because then they start bringing in their own particular doctrine into it, that in a lot of ways, a lot of them aren't scriptural doctrine. It's something that they added on to, and they came up with this idea. We believe this way, you have to also. You know, but I try to go by just what Jesus said. And I study the scriptures, and I want to get the whole meaning of what the apostles were teaching and what Christ said to do and all those things. But as far as belonging to a religious organization, I don't like that, because then you're being indoctrinated according to how they want you to think, not how Jesus said to do it. I have a difficulty with that. But the Russians see how the organization divides up families from the get-go, and how it goes on, and it divides up the family even more if something happens, and then it leaves these elderly people with no family. It leaves children with no parents. It breaks up these families, and it's an attack on the society as a whole and the Russian nation as a whole. And they see that if that continued to spread, that it would just break up more families and more families and more families, and pretty soon Russia wouldn't be Russia. And I understand where they're coming from on that. You know, of course there's more to it, but that was one of the points that what they made in court, was that it is an attack on the citizens of Russia and the culture of Russia, because that's not how Russian people are. They don't do that to their family members. But then you get an organization in here telling you that you have to do it this way, and it's leaving people alone and with no family, children, elderly. It doesn't matter the age, you know, it's just leaving people alone and on their own, and that's not what family is for. Family is so you have someone to rely on, someone who's got your back, you know. And if you break that up, then, you know, society as a whole will fall. And I understand that. I see how that is, you know. So many of us have been through that, you know. Just think about it. If that, the organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, only make up 1% of the population. So if that was moved up to 20 or 30%, can you imagine how many families would be broken up? It would be ridiculous. Already at this point, every single family that has anything to do with that organization is broken up in one way or another. And, you know, if my kids want to believe one way and I believe another way, well, that's okay. You know, if I encouraged my kids to go to church when they were growing up, you know, but I didn't I didn't tell them, well, you have to go to this church or you have to go to that church. I let them choose what church they wanted to go to, and that's where they grew up. But that didn't mean that that's where they went when they grew up. That was just when they were kids, you know. And I was teaching them things and talking to them about things like that too. And then when they grow up, they can decide what they want to do. And I'm not going to say, well, I'm not going to talk to you because you didn't go to the church I told you to go to. I mean, really? The fact that they believe in God and are on a path of following God is what's important to me. You know, I think our each and everybody's journey to spirituality and understanding is our own between us and God. I don't think a church should get in the middle of it and say, well, you have to do this. It reminds me of the Pharisees, you know, in Jesus' day, you know, where they knew what they were supposed to do, but the Pharisees wanted to add more and more and more and more onto it, you know, and Jesus didn't even like that. So why let people do that to us today? But, you know, like I say, my channel's my opinion. But sometimes I just gotta say something, you know. I gotta speak up about it. But Russia banned Jehovah's Witnesses. I understand why they did. And just because you're banned doesn't mean you're persecuted. Just because you go to jail for violating that law does not mean you're being persecuted. Persecuted, I think, is when they line you up in front of a firing squad and kill you or your family, or threaten to kill you. These people aren't being threatened with death even. They're just saying if you don't obey the law, you're going to jail. Okay? So if they're not obeying the law and they get picked up and they get thrown in jail, then okay. You know, things will change, you know, but I really don't think that, I think we'll see an increase in countries that ban Watchtower organization. I think there's going to be more because they realize how it divides up families and therefore society, you know. And I think religion and faith in God should bring people together. I don't think it should divide. That's how I see it. I don't see a reason for any of that. You know, I spent years being shunned because of my choice of not being a Jehovah's Witness. And that doesn't mean me or my family are bad people. Doesn't mean that we're not Christian people. Doesn't mean we don't love God. It just means that we don't want to follow a certain doctrine. And the organization isn't the judge. You know, the apostles in Romans talked about how there would be some people that considered a day holy and other people that considered a different day holy, and that people would have difference of opinions, and that was fine. It was okay. You know, like they say, it all comes out in the wash. So, you know, I think the faith is the most important thing, and the trust and the belief. I don't think how you exactly do it means as much, but like I say, my opinion. But I'll talk to you guys again later. Maybe when I have less to say. I'm just going to go on. But I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.